Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today we are going to discuss about the topic scope. Scope is a very important and interesting topic. Let's start from a very simple example to understand what is scope, and then we will get into the details. I'm actually planning for a vacation, and this time during my vacation I'm going to visit a tourist place, and I'm trying to prepare the requirements. What are the things that I will be doing after reaching that place? So some of the things what I'm planning are like I'm going to stay on a beach resort, and I'm planning to visit 12 islands which are near to that particular place, and out of that two are little far, but I am planning to visit all the 12 islands. And then after that I wish to visit the tourist spots in the place. So this is my requirement. Actually, my vacation, the time of period is just a week time, and already for this vacation I have saved some money. So now let's try to connect all these pieces. So I am planning for a vacation trip, and I have certain requirements. These requirements are called as the scope. These requirements are the scope of my vacation trip. We discussed two more factors as well. What are those two more factors? One is the timeline. I specifically mentioned I have only 1 week time for this trip. So the timeline is 1 week. And I have added one more point. For this vacation trip, I already saved good amount of money. So I have a budget also in place, which is the cost. These three keywords, what are they? Scope, time, and budget. These three are called the project constraints. Three constraints of a project management, or these three constraints create a triangle which is called as the iron triangle. I am stressing this point now because when we start the season related to our project management series, we will be definitely touching upon these points as well. So we know what is scope. Scope is nothing but the requirements that we are targeting to achieve. What is the timeline? The dedicated time to achieve those requirements. What is budget? The amount of money that is available to achieve these requirements. So now we understood what is scope, what is time, what is budget, and these three creates a triangle which is called as the iron triangle in the project management, and these three are called the three constraints of the project management. Now let's try to understand some scenarios here. I said I have three requirements when I'm going to visit this tourist place. What are those three requirements? One is staying at the beach resort, second is visiting all the 12 islands, and the third one is visiting all the tourist places. Now, during the planning, I am realizing that, as I mentioned, those two islands are very far, okay? Not little far, it's very far. And I need to take a separate flight to reach to those islands. It is going to take extra time for me, and it is also going to uh, use my good amount of money because I need to separately plan the flight charges. Now how to manage this? But it's in my scope. My vacation trip scope have this as visiting these two islands, but now I'm seeing a challenge with respect to both time as well the money. Always the key is to balance out these three constraints. That is very important. So here we are able to see that the scope is more. One option is I can de-scope. What is that word? De-scope. What is that de-scoping means? Whatever which is already planned, we can pull that out because we don't have sufficient time or sufficient money or both. Here in my case, I don't have time, I don't have money, so both. So I am de-scoping. This is one option. So what I can do? I can think like, okay, let me park this visit to these two islands later during my next trip. Now I will concentrate only on the other 10 islands which are very close, which doesn't need any extra time to travel or which doesn't need any extra money for flight charges. So this is one possibility, that is de-scoping. What is the other possibility? I am able to see if I can manage my stay, if I can extend my stay for another 3 days, I am able to see that there is a good discount that is going to come. So automatically I am going to get a discount offer in my flight ticket. So the budget issue is resolved. But what is the problem? Timeline is the problem because I have taken only 1 week time off for my vacation. Now what I need to do? I need to extend my time off period for 8 days or maybe 10 days so that I will be able to manage this discount offer, and with budget wise I will not have any problem and I can still manage to visit those two islands. So here what I am extending? I am extending the timeline. First possibility, we de-scoped. Second possibility, we are extending the timeline. So it is understood. I don't have any other option. I am extending my timeline. By extending the timeline, I can still target for all the items that I have initially scoped for, including the visit to two islands, which are far. This is a second possibility. What is the third possibility? Third possibility is like, what is the issue with if I can get some additional amount, if I have little bit more budget at my side, I can manage to travel quickly and without extending the time. I can manage because flight charges are high, but if I have sufficient amount at my hand, I can manage to do that and I can visit those two islands without creating any kind of deviation in my timeline and any kind of deviation in my scope. Just by putting extra amount of money, I will be able to manage it in a way that I can take direct flights and I can manage to stay at the place in the island itself and manage to come back because I have sufficient money. So here, if I am borrowing good amount of money from my parents in addition to my savings for the vacation trip, I should be able to manage it. So here, what is the possibility I am taking? I am not changing the timeline, I am not changing the scope, I am just putting extra money so that I will be able to manage this plan of visiting those two islands. So we have seen three possibilities. In every possibility, we touched one constraint, either scope or timeline or budget, so that all the three constraints are balanced. That's what we have done. So the important key factor to remember here is always these three factors need to be balanced. We will talk about this and discuss about this in detail when we talk about the project management related season and related to those episodes. But here I am explaining because this is very important to understand the scope concept. So now we talked about scope and how to manage it. So whenever we are trying to add scope, it is not only we are touching the constraint scope, invariably other constraints like timeline and budget also gets changed. So we need to be really, really careful when making any changes in the scope. Not only changes in the scope, in any of these three constraints, we need to be really careful because they are kind of like dependent. So now we saw three possibilities. Always remember these three possibilities. Whenever in project management, we have to do anything related to these three constraints, we need to balance it out. Okay, I am touching or I am changing one constraint. So what is the impact in the other two constraints? Am I balancing out or not? So now this is the example. Now coming to the scenario of a project. For a project, when we want to start a project, that project has certain things planned in it, like how my vacation trip has certain requirements. Similar to that, every project when we are starting, we will have good number of requirements planned in that project. But can we complete everything and go to market? No. What we will be doing, we will be planning different releases. When we say different releases, every release we will plan certain requirements. That is the scope of that release. The entire requirement set is the scope of the project, where for every release, for different release, we will try to create the subset of that superset of requirements and we will place it in different releases. So project scope is the superset. Inside project, we have different releases, and from that superset of requirements, we will create subset in each and every release. So this subset will become the scope of that particular release. We will talk about something called as MVP, minimum viable product, that we will be talking soon. But I'm going to give a very small or a very crisp level of information about that. See, when we have so many requirements in a project, can we wait for all that requirements to be completed so that I can go and meet my customer with this product? It will be too late. By the time we implement everything, maybe the problem statement for which we have created this project itself would have changed, and maybe needs of customer would have changed, and market would have totally be different. Maybe our product may not be required by the time we implement all the requirements and go to market. That is why early to market is one of the key. So when we say early to market, what are we trying to do? First time when we are creating a product, we really want to check with the customer or the users, am I really creating the right product? And am I solving the problem what actually you people are facing? And whether this will be a product that customers will purchase it. Whether my track is right or not. How are we validating? For that, we generally plan first a minimum viable product, that is having minimum set of requirements, not like everything, all nice to have, good to have functionalities. No, not required all those things. People may not be interested to see all those things. What is very important? That we will be creating a very, very crisp set of requirements. When I say crisp set of requirements, these requirements are targeted for the MVP release. So the scope of this MVP release is only these 4 or 5 requirements, which are going to be the core set of requirements. So when we deliver this to the customer or the user, they can analyze this. Okay, yeah, this is solving my problem. Let us try to understand more about this product and their roadmap, and try to get this product which is going to solve our problem. That is the whole purpose of this MVP release. And after that, once this MVP is successful and customers are actually looking for the enhancement of this product and looking for the product roadmap, that is when we will plan version 1, version 2, like that we will be keep evolving the product. So that time for version 1, we will create a different scope, we will add some set of requirements, and for version 2 we will create some set of requirements. Like that, for every version, for every release, the scope will be keep getting added. Very important thing is, whenever we start, we need to define the scope. Now let's talk about what is defining the scope, and the second point is what is aligning the scope. As I said, let's take the simple example as MVP. Before going to MVP, I want to give a very simple example from our day-to-day life so that you people can correlate on that. See, I'm going to first year college. Okay, so first year college syllabus is planned for to cover till 10 months or 11 months of the whole syllabus is planned for covering till 10 months. Let's take 10 months. Okay, and they would have targeted something to be completed. The syllabus, the subset of that entire 10-month syllabus, a subset is created and that is targeted for the first quarter. So in first 3 months, what is the scope of the syllabus that need to be completed? What is the advantage of this? So now students also can target, okay, first 3 months my whole concentration is and focus is going to be on this syllabus because this is the quarterly target. And then after that, for 6 months, that is the half-yearly target or the scope that has been set. So now the scope of this 6 months is to learn these sections of the syllabus. And the overall 10-month syllabus that will be for the first year, that will be taken care till 10 months. That is the scope for 10 months. So what are we trying to achieve here? The same thing how I have explained. There is a project scope. Then there is something called as quarterly target, that is for a subset of that whole project scope, right? The whole first year syllabus, subset of that is your quarterly scope. Similarly, half-yearly scope is also the subset of that. The advantage of creating this initially is we know this is what I need to achieve, this is what I need to cover, this is what I am going to learn in this first 3 months of my first year of education, college education. So now I know the timeline, that is 3 months, and I know what are the topics that I need to cover. This clarity I am having. Similarly, in project, when we create for this MVP, what we will be doing for MVP, as I said, it is the subset of the whole project, which is a very crisp level of information. So here, this crisp level of information, initially we will be defining what are those requirements that are going to be focused for this MVP. Like for quarterly syllabus, what are the sections or the syllabus that we are going to cover? Similarly, for the MVP, we are first defining. Why we need to define? On the flow we can do, no? There is no harm in that. No, there is problem. What is the problem? If on the flow we start picking up the requirements, how we will know by when I can complete? And how will I know how many people need to work on that? And how will I know what is the budget that is required for this MVP release? I cannot plan anything until scope is defined. If the college education doesn't have that syllabus or doesn't have the scope, what I need to complete within the year, how can I plan? How many years I need to study? If I don't know what is the use of that, how I will be in trouble, right? If there is no defined syllabus, what is the use of that whole 1 year? What I will be getting, I have no clue. And how much I need to invest for my first year fee, education fee, I don't know, because I don't know what is the timeline it is going to take, because I don't know the syllabus and I don't know the scope of this course. Similarly, in project also, if we don't know, what will happen? So first thing is, we need to define the scope. Okay, so MVP is targeted to this set of audience, and what are they expecting from our product, and what are the things we need to give to them so that they feel much more confidence about the product and they will be looking for our upcoming releases. Now we are picking up some 4 requirements which are the core requirements. Now defining part is done. What is the advantage of definition of the scope? Definition of the scope is really required. The reason is, with this definition, we can plan how many people, if they work on these 4 requirements, how much time it will take. This is called as high level estimation. We will make the high level estimation so that we can say like, okay, you will get the MVP in 3 months by using these many number of people in our team. So with that, we can also plan our budget. 3 months, these many people, how much I need to invest for this MVP release. So here, without scope, how can I plan the other 2? I cannot. Here also sometimes challenges come. What are the challenges? MVP release is definitely need to be done by another 2 months, not 3 months. That is the call. That is the customer requirement also. You need to give the MVP so that we can analyze and plan for whether to go ahead with this product or not. Not more than 2 months, we cannot wait. That is their concern. Now what we can do? We cannot reduce the scope because they are the fundamental core scope, right? Please try to recollect the example what we have seen at the beginning. That is the vacation trip. We took 3 possibilities. What are those 3 possibilities? Change the possible constraint. Either de-scope certain things or increase the timeline or increase the budget. Here, as MVP, we have planned only the 4 core functionalities. We cannot de-scope certain things because that is must and mandatory. We cannot de-scope it. So we need to go ahead with that. So scope is done. We cannot change it. Of course, time, they are not ready to wait for more than 2 months. So time is also fixed now. What is the other thing that is still we can manage is money. We need to put extra amount. We need to increase the budget. When we say increasing the budget, what is the advantage of that? We can have extra people in our team so that they can, instead of 4 people, we can have 6 people or 7 people so that they can start from the scratch and they can deliver it in 2 months. This is how we need to plan the 3 constraints, how to balance the 3 constraints. So now we know defining the scope, and if there are any challenges coming in the scope or in any of the 3 constraints, how to balance it out also we know. Second is alignment. Whenever the scope is made, the scope is prepared by the product management team. Product management team prepares the scope, what they are planning to target, because product management team generally connects with the client or the customer team. So they know that what is the expectation and what are the requirements that we are planning to deliver at high level to solve the customer issue. So now product management team prepared the scope. They have taken it to the team and got the high level estimate and accordingly planned the time as well the budget, and scope is ready. All these things are ready. Now we need to align it with the customer, or we need to align it with the stakeholders. Why it is important? Because if we are not getting that alignment, who is validating whether our scope is right or not? Maybe we thought only these 4 are the core key functionalities. Who knows, there may be one more which actually stakeholders are really looking for and we have missed that. So now definition of scope is very important. Similarly, this alignment is very, very important. Once you make this alignment, you ensure, okay, this is now aligned with all the stakeholders, that this is the scope of this particular release MVP, and these are the requirements we are going to cover. We need to really document that. That is called as scope document. That is called as scope document. If in case during the scope alignment discussion, one more requirement is shared by the stakeholder to add it as part of the MVP, then as I mentioned, now scope has increased. Now what we need to do, we need to really check whether our time and money can be balanced. So what we need to say, with the current set of people whom we have in our team, if we want to take this additional requirement, we need extra time of so and so time. For that, you need to take the team support to get the high level estimates, because immediately when this requirement is coming, you cannot have really time to write down the user stories to get the estimation values. So this level of estimation is called as high level estimate. How many sprints I may need to implement this functionality, that should be fine. So now this high level estimate we have given. Now again with the alignment, stakeholders are saying, no, I cannot take extra one more month. So now scope is also finalized, where we cannot change anything with 5 requirements. Time also they are not ready to extend. So now we can only propose with one option, that is called as to add the budget more, so that we can have some more people added in our team to balance it out. When adding people additionally, just we should not consider like how current team members are working, because when people are joining our team, they need some time to ramp up and they need to get the product knowledge and all those things. If it's from scratch and we have not started, it may be less, or it may not be having any knowledge transfer process. But when someone is coming in the existing project, then they need some time to settle down. So with those things only we need to plan the timeline. That is very important. Just by adding people, we may not be able to solve. With some time factor only we will be able to solve. So we need to be really knowing what is extra time they need for that preparation to settle down in the team. So now we learned what is scope with some example, and what are the different, how the first year college syllabus, why there is a scope, and with the help of the scope we know what is targeted in a quarter, what is targeted in the half yearly syllabus, what is targeted in the yearly syllabus. We have the clarity. Similar way, we talked about how we will plan the MVP release. Now coming to the point of sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is also a scope of the sprint. What is basically the scope? What I am planning to achieve in a particular timeline, what are the items that I am going to achieve, that is nothing but the scope of that particular timeline period. Where here in our case, as sprint is a time boxed event, it can be for 2 weeks or 3 weeks according to the length of the sprint. So in that period, what are the things that I'm targeting to achieve, that becomes the scope of that particular sprint. So sprint backlog items is called as the scope of the sprint, which is again associated with the committed sprint goal, because we have already seen what is the relationship between the sprint goal and the sprint backlog items. As a team, we commit on the sprint goal, and to achieve the sprint goal, we use the sprint backlog items that are associated with that goal. So sprint is a time boxed event. For this time boxed event, the scope is nothing but the sprint backlog items. So we saw the scope at the project level, at the release level like MVP, and to the level like a sprint. I think we have completely discussed about the scope of the project with the example, and the scope of the release with the example and the scope of the sprint. So this is very important to understand. We have discussed in detail. This is very important episode because this is going to be really helpful in the project management as well. So I took good amount of time to explain with the different examples. So remember the three constraints: the iron triangle, the scope, timeline, as well the budget, and try to remember the examples what we have discussed: the vacation trip, the college education, and how to balance out the three different constraints of the project. That is very important. That also we have seen. So this is very important, and this episode have covered most of the details on the scope. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.